tonight for the opportunity to come, to fellowship together, to study together, to think about the times that we live in, and how we can be prepared. Pray that you be with Brother Mark as he shares tonight. Give him wisdom. He put in a lot of time over the years in studying on this subject. And so I just pray, Father, that you would anoint him tonight. You might speak through him. You might challenge us through him. Give us insights. We ask this in Christ's name. Amen. The things that I want you to know, you can go ahead and be seated if you want to. I want to give a disclaimer. None of us are financial planners, right? So if and the intent of this tonight is not to tell you how to invest your money. That's not the intent at all. There are people that will tell you how to do that for a price, and some of you have those, and maybe some don't. But that's not our intent. The intent is to share some things and to give you some information, maybe by discerning the times where we are and how you can preserve what God has already put in your hand. And that's a key. I want to read a couple of verses tonight, because there might be some who would say, over the years have been people who don't believe that you should have wealth, that's not a biblical thing. And some would take some of these verses, like in Hebrews 13:5, it says, keep your life free from public. Be content with what you have. Said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we do understand that God is in control and he's not going to leave us or forsake us, but I want you to focus on this. Sometimes it is the phrase love of money. He didn't say keep your life free from money. He said from the love of money. Okay? Matthew 6, one of my favorite chapters. Back in the life verses, Matthew 6:33 says, no one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. So God should be our master, and then money can be a tool that he uses with that. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18, it says, you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may confirm his covenant that he swore to your fathers as it is this day. And obviously there he's speaking to the nation of Israel. Proverbs 13:22, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the sinner's wealth is laid up for the righteous. Did you notice that he's talking about grandchildren? Yeah, the kids are paying, but the grandchildren are. And then finally, in 1 Timothy 6:17-19, as for the rich in this present age, he charged them not to be haughty, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches from God. So one of the things I think you're going to find out tonight, that there is an uncertainty about wealth. And but he said, we don't focus on that. We don't put our hope on that, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. They are to do good, to be rich in good work, to be generous, and ready to share, thus storing up treasure for themselves, a good foundation for the future, that they may take hold of that which is truly life. So, a number of years ago, I developed a study on the stewardship of life. And what I understand from Scripture is that you and I do not own anything. Now, you might say, I have a house, I own a house, I own a car, I own a piece of property, whatever, but the reality is you don't really own them. God has put them in your hand, you're to be a steward of. So there's nothing wrong with having wealth if we understand that God gave it to us and it belongs to him and we are simply stewards. In Matthew 24, Jesus tells a parable of a master who calls his three servants together. And he says to the one, he gives him 5 talents. And he says he gives each one according to his ability. And then the next he gives to the next he gives one. And he tells them to take care of that while he's gone. And he's gone for a long period of time. The first one is industrious. He goes out and works, invests it, he doubles it. Second one does likewise. The third one simply takes it and buries it. And when the master comes, he rewards the first two. Well done, good and faithful son. But the third one, he takes from him what he had, and he said, if you just put it in the bank and draw interest, it'd be better than burying it in the ground. So we are stewards. So whatever you have, there are three things that I understand about stewardship. One thing that we're all equally, and that is the stewardship of time. Anybody have more than 24 hours in a day? 365 and a quarter days in a year, anybody?
We need to petition Congress for that.
No. We waste it. I can tell you, you don't need another hour today, and you don't need it. And why do I say that? Because God made it just like it is. And when he looked at the end of those 6 days, he said, it is good. So we think we need more. We may want more. I'm going to tell you, you're not going to get any more. We're all equal in that. And then not only time, but our talents. Each of you have physical talent, and you have, as you know Christ, you have spiritual talents. Yes. And those are given as God intended, directs, and you're to be a steward of that. Paul said to Timothy that he needs to use the gift that he's been given. And then the last one is our treasure. But we're to be a steward of that, to invest it from Christ. So I'm going to stop there. And Mark can tell you more about himself. I met him a couple of months ago in a prayer meeting that we have. And I got to listen to Mark, and I feel that he really likes to talk about this. And that he actually knows some things about this subject. And so when we decided to do it, we asked Mark to keep it. And then Bill Henderson, Russell Cross, and I, we're just going to look here and try to help him out where we can, right? Okay. So, Mark, you come, and you might want to give a little bit about your background and how you've come through life to this point. I've heard some of
Yeah. Let's see if we can help the sound out. My name is Mark Burrow, and a few of y'all know me. Elaine tells me that we've known each other for 40 years. And unfortunately, I don't remember that. But that was back in the days when I was attending Aldersgate. 40 years ago, I was baptized in this church after being an agnostic for 26 years and arguing at a God that I didn't believe in. One day, driving right out here on Highway 6 bypass, God spoke and said, I am. Okay? So I became a believer in the blink of an eye and eventually came to be a home church leader under Aldersgate's oversight. And so now I've been a believer for 40 years. And professionally, I've done a lot of different things. I was a biomedical science major at A&M, pre-veterinary major, and left that whenever my wife became pregnant with our first child, who is now 46 years old, 45 years old. I've been married 45 years. And have 3 kids and 22 grandkids. Yeah, we're having fun. And after the Lord got hold of my life, he changed the way that I look at the world, changed the way I behaved, did business, everything. And what we're here to talk about tonight is something that I developed a lot of passion for. So I was biomedical science, and then I became manufacturing manager for 3 different companies, 2 of them here at Bryan College Station. And then I became the engineering liaison for a group that made modules for testing plant growth in space. And then I went into home remodeling and construction. and did that at the same time as I had a goat milk dairy. And I did a goat milk dairy for 18 years. And Bill came out to my dairy with some of his grandkids, I think, and sampled my ice cream and cheeses and all that. And I had I want to say successful, but we didn't make any money at it. I had a fairly large goat milk dairy. I sold products to H-E-B, Whole Foods, and Central Market. We made 14 cheeses, 4 flavors of yogurt, over 300 flavors of ice cream. And anyways, we had a lot of fun doing that. Got into construction. I did the dairy for 18 years, did construction along with the dairy, and shut my dairy down when my mother-in-law was dying from cancer, so that my wife could actually go spend some time with her mother. And the last 2 months of her life, my wife got to spend more time with her mother than she had spent there in 10 years. And so that went well, but now I'm in transition, and now I'm a real estate agent. So I tell people I have a but you know what the old adage is, never talk about religion or politics, like company. Well, those are my 2 favorite subjects. And then throw economics. And so I passed out this little page of things that I have kind of keyed on. You know, I'm not a widely read individual, but typically I only have to see it once and then I learn it. And these resources are pretty substantive. You know, economics in one lesson. The guy just, he wrote that book in the early 1960s, and he was a journalist that had you know, kind of like me, he had a love for economics, and he became known in the economics world as one of the higher things, simple economics. And when you read that, he likes to approach everything from about 6 different directions and explain to you how everything is very interconnected. And when money dies, that book is a overview of how badly the German government managed their money between World War I and World War II, and how they collapsed their own currency. And has anybody seen that photograph of people carrying a wheelbarrow full of paper to buy a loaf of bread? Well, that was the Weimar Republic. That's what that book is about, is how badly they managed their currency and how it collapsed. And then when you look at the last one, surviving the economic collapse, Fernando Farfugere was a theoretical survivalist in Argentina in the late 1990s. Does anybody know what happened in Argentina in 2001? Their currency collapsed. And when their currency collapsed, it caused devastation in the countryside. And within 12 months of the currency collapsing, they had people literally starving to death. Okay. He wrote that book for North Americans, United States. He said, your time is coming because your government is doing the same thing that our government did. And so these 3 books kind of form a primer of where I come from. And then when you get down to these data resources that I have listed, you know, these are a group of YouTube presenters that are economically based, and they come from different perspectives. Mark Moss and Joe Brown are very factual, historically based individuals. They have excellent presentations about a lot of different things. They put out a video almost everything, and you can learn a whole lot of history from those guys. Neil McCoy Ward is a former British special ops guy that has gotten into finding staff military service, and he lives on the Isle of Man. He has a beautiful accent, and but he's more of a current day financial advisor. And anyways, he's got a lot of good current event information. Jay Bravo is a clown. Is it? Carol says yes, he's fine. And so but he is a day trader, and he's always talking his program for managing day trading, and he's a multimillionaire because his theory and his techniques are successful. But I watch him mainly for current events, just what is happening on the ground today. Of course, who's not familiar with barbecue sauce? Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that's Robert Kiyosaki. And he's saying the same, he's been around for a long time. He's saying the same thing that young bucks are saying, and that we're in trouble. We're in a lot of trouble. And Stephen Van Meter is very similar to Tony Bravo without the silly comedy. He has day trading programs that he advocates, he watches things. So if you want to see what traders are doing very successfully, today, Johnny Bravo and Stephen Peter are the people to watch to that. But my message, for decades, literally, has been that our government is not being a good steward, pretty much. And so the question is, are we paying attention? And by and large, the answer is no. Most Americans are busy being productive and responsible and paying their taxes and moving on. One thing that another part of my life that I didn't share a while ago was about 18 years ago. I had the opportunity to go to China as a missionary. And I lived in China for 6 months. And so I got to have a pretty good exposure to the Chinese people, Chinese culture. I was in the very northeast corner of China, right 50 miles from the point where North Korea, Russia, and China come together. And I was an agricultural consultant over there. And so I was talking to common to buy many things, rice, grain, rice straw, and corn, and different things to feed cattle on a 100-acre ranch that I was managing. And what I came to know is something that I tell people all the time, is that really the Chinese dream is the same as the American. And I think it's the same as the same dream that people have every country on the planet. That is two simple things: to have enough and to be at peace. That's by and large what we hope for. But as we are pursuing those things, are we paying attention? It's actually fun. So the question that I love to ask as I start talking about economy, and by the way, didn't get me started talking about politics. Because in the year 2000, I was elected Republican County Chairman of Robertson County. And in this year's Republican primary, I just got elected Republican County Chairman again. Okay. And so that just says a whole lot. So anyways, economy. Question I ask is, what is money? And this is where you can answer. I like to have a dialogue. So what is money? This is what I'm saying. Instruments. And now see, that is what money does. What is it? He said an instrument of exchange, but I'm asking, what is money? Gold, silver, gold. Okay, that's very true. That is money. But now let me ask again, what is money? Why is gold and silver money? And to me, the fast answer is money is a representation of productive time. Okay, gold and silver had to be mined, it had to be refined, it had to be maybe coined. Okay, but we recognize it as being rarity. And so now we use that as medium of exchange. Okay, because it represents somebody that definitely that it's rare. Okay, you realize that if you took all the gold in the world, it would make a cube that's something like less than 50 feet by 50 feet. All the gold, there's not that much. We're making more all the time, but it's still just not much. But gold is a medium of exchange, and it's a representation of productive time. So I ask people as a proof of that. If I come to your house and I lay on your couch and I eat your potato chips and I watch your television, how much would you pay me for doing it? So I'm asking how much you would pay, not how much the American government, because the American government pays people to do that a lot. And if you read that book, When Money Dies, you'll see what the end result. Okay, and actually we're experiencing that. So money is a representation of an individual's productive time. Now, what is this? This is currency. This is not money. Currency is a representation of money. Okay, but what happened in the United States of America in 1971 started the currency? We left the gold standard. Okay, and we became a bona fide fiat currency. Fiat means that it is not tied. And so, well, before 1970, the theory was if you had an ounce of gold in storage someplace in the bank, and then they issued a gold certificate, that certificate, there was only one certificate for that ounce of gold. Okay, so it was a 1-1 exchange. But over time, fractional banking did. And so they began to lose that value. And to where if they had an ounce of gold in the bank, then they could issue twice the value of that in credit. Okay. And in the history of money and currency, after banking was developed, what we found is that there's about an 80-year cycle between solvency and insolvency. Okay, and so the new phenomenon has come about since 1971 is that we're realizing that instead of there being an 80-year cycle, we're seeing this being cut down to about 50-year cycle. So let me tell you another story. In the year 1930, you could take 30 American dollars and buy 1 ounce of gold. 1930, $30, 1 ounce of gold. Today, what is an ounce of gold selling? $23.40. Okay. In 1930, you could take that $30 and go to a very good clothing store and buy 1 good men's business suit. Okay. Today, if you go to a good men's clothing store, how much are you going to pay for a good business? It's actually about $2,400. Yeah, I understand. So about 10 years ago, I was teaching this out, talking to a fellow, and I asked him, what does a good business suit cost today? And at the time, gold was selling for about $1,500 an ounce. And he said, about $1,500. I got 6 of them hanging in my closet. And today, it's the same. That 1 ounce of gold is still buying 1 good business. But the question is, why does it take $2,300 to buy an ounce of gold today versus $30 90 years ago? Okay, she said inflation. He's heard me say this. He knows what it is. So inflation, he said devaluation, okay? Inflation is actually a misnomer. It's a term that is used by our government to mislead people as to what is actually happening, okay? So now we have the question, why is there inflation? Why is there devaluation? Sorry?
Many dollars.
Printing dollars? Okay. Uh, the truth is that our government doesn't manage the money. Who manages the money in the United States? Sorry? Yeah, not Biden. Federal Reserve. Okay, that's true. Federal Reserve manages our money. They're supposed to. But who's the Federal Reserve? Do you know the Federal Reserve is not a federal branch of government? Federal Reserve is a privately owned corporation that is chartered by the United States to quote unquote manage our money. Okay. And what is the goal of a private business? To make a profit. Okay. And I got bad news for you. The goal of the Federal Reserve is the same. Their goal is to make a profit. How do they make a profit? By managing money. They manage the money and they devalue it on a scheduled basis. And whenever they issue bonds at one rate, pay them off later with currency that's devalued to make money on the schedule. And if you look at what an ounce of gold sold for in 1930, you got $30 for an ounce of gold. Today it's let's say $2,400. And I believe that if you take that 30 and divide it by the 2,400, you understand what the real value of money is compared to $1930. Okay. And that, if you do that math, it comes up to be about 1.2%. So $30 is 1.2% of 2,300 and something. Okay. Now, if that is a measure of devaluation of currency, and they want to devalue our currency, the Fed always says their target rate is 2%. Okay, they say inflation, I say devaluation. Okay, and if their target is 2% per year devaluation, but the currency is worth only 1.2% of what it was worth in 1930, where do they go from there? So if you say, oh well, you know, they're only going to devalue that 1.2%, they're only going to devalue that 2%. Well, you have a regression that is becoming infinitely, smaller over time. And if a business sees that they're not making a profit, what do? They change their business model. They figure out what they can do to start making a real profit. Well, the whole point that I bring to people is we're there. Our money manager, Fed, really has no place to go except to scratch everything off, start over. Some of y'all got one of these little pages at the bottom of it. It past Stephen Van Meter, it has goldsilver.com. I think people on this end of the group got that page. If it's not on your page, write it on there. Goldsilver.com. Okay. Yeah. So goldsilver.com is a site that's operated by a guy named Malone, and he wants to sell you gold and silver. Okay, so he's got a really good business going there. But if you look on his homepage, there's a tab at the top that says resources. When you go to that resource tab, underneath there is a drop-down menu, and one of those items is the history of money. And no, the hidden value of money. And when you look at that, it's got about 12 videos. And if you watch those videos, you'll come away with a bachelor's degree understanding of it. Okay, and he shows how money was gold, thousands of years ago, and gold and silver, and then it's morphed into where we use currency, but really people refer to true money as times go by. Okay, and that's why there's two things pressuring the value of money up today. One is the devaluation of currency. The other one is the need. And so people recognize we are in a critical time, and that if they want to preserve their wealth, they have to do something other than put it in the bank. Okay, and so more people are buying gold. Who is buying more gold than anybody else in the world? China and India. Okay, and they are bringing gold in by the truckload. It's pretty amazing, but they recognize the problem. So the point that I make to folks is that gold is not an investment. It's not. What is an investment? An investment is someplace where you put your money in the hope that it will grow in value. Okay, and gold, when gold goes from $30 an ounce to $2,400 an ounce, has it increased its value? It has not increased its value. It has maintained its value. What we're seeing is the dollar has lost relative value, but gold is maintained. So gold, even though it buys the same thing in the year 2024 as it did in 1930, it hasn't increased its value. So I tell people that gold is a piggy bank. It's just a place to store your wealth. Okay, but it's real interesting. You can store a lot of wealth. So, how many pounds of gold does it take to store $1 million today? It's about 35 pounds. Yeah, it's amazing. You can pick up $1 million and walk off with it. If you had $1 million in $100 bills, you couldn't pick it up. But in gold, about 32 to 35 pounds. How many pounds of silver does it take to store $1 million? I calculated it the other day. I think it was about 2,025 pounds. Okay, so it takes a lot of silver to store the same dollars today. But here's another point that I took. I think silver actually has an investment potential. Okay, today. Why? For most of history, gold and silver traded at a 16-to-1 ratio. So 16 ounces of silver was 1 ounce of gold. And when you look at what gold and silver are trading at today, gold is around $2,350 an ounce, something like that. Silver is about $27.75. So you're looking at about it's more than an 80-to-1. Okay, that's what gold and silver are trading today. But the Burrow theory is that if the stuff hits the fan, the American dollar collapses, the people with money are going to be wanting to store their tangible assets. They're going to run and buy out every ounce of gold that's available. And when the gold runs out, the silver will be there. And then I believe that the silver is going to start trading at a 16-to-1 ratio, just like it has for most of history. And so any silver that you're holding will automatically snap to 5x its value. So there'll be a windfall potential. So, what will it take for us to get to that point? The point of currency collapse. You know, can that happen in the United States? The reason I mentioned gold, silver, is one of those videos. He mentions that Switzerland has a currency museum. And in that currency museum, they have tens of thousands of examples of currencies that have failed different places on the earth. Tens of thousands of different currencies that have failed since the invention of the printing press. Is the dollar immune to this? I believe that we're beginning to see that huge snowball on top of the mountain rolling down towards us. And we're directly in its path. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? You know, are we just going to say there's no snowball there? I don't believe there's a snowball. You know, oh, I'm fine now. Did you ever hear the story about the man that fell off the 100-story building and didn't believe that it would be a problem? And then as he passed each floor, somebody would cry out to him and say, "How are you doing?" And he'd say, "So good so far." I think we're on about the third or fourth floor, personally, you know, headed down. And it's probably not going to be you know, I don't have a big portfolio of wealth. I have a very small portfolio of wealth. But what I own my land outright, I own my trucks outright, and I own my goats outright. I still have goats, though. I sold 50 of them last week. But we are headed for a collapse. Anybody hear about the bank that collapsed last Friday? First Republic Bank. You know, and one bank is not the straw that breaks the camel's back. Why do I say that, Rachel? Who knows what the national on-book debt of the United States is? How much? It is, yes. The last number I saw published was 34.4 trillion. But they're adding $1 trillion of debt to that 34.4 trillion. They're adding $1 trillion every 100 days. And when we look at when money dies, that is a symptom of the hyperinflationary trend. But that tactic by government to kick the can down the road is really a devaluation of the currency of capital. So they're adding $1 trillion of debt to our current $34.4 trillion of debt every 100 days. Okay, so now let me ask you another question. What is the current American GDP? Sorry, 1.6? No, GDP would be gross domestic product. This is the productivity of our country. And our government today is claiming that we have about a $20 trillion GDP. But what they're not telling you about that $20 trillion is that about 40% of that is government spending. So, you know, they're mixing their they're lying to us is what they're doing. Okay? So if we are taking 40% of our 20 trillion and it's government spending, what does the government produce? I mean, gross domestic product. It's supposed to be production measured, not money spent. Okay. So what does our government produce? I only know of one thing that our government produces any place that is actual production. What would that do? Yeah, that's not production, that's debt. Our government owns and operates power plants on rivers. Okay, river authorities with hydro, electric mills. They actually produce power. They produce it well. They produce it inexpensively. That's the only thing our government actually produces. Everything else, they have to take money from producers to spend. When they do that, what is their efficiency level? If they take $1 from us, how much of that actually goes out into spending in the public? Is it 10? I was going to be generous, 30%. Okay, Bill says 10. I'll buy 10. But if 10% is doing, our defense, our federal road programs, our welfare programs, all those kind of things, where's the rest of it? It's just government bureaucracy. Okay, we got more people being employed by the government to manage the dollars that they take from us, and it's only 10% efficient. And so how does that figure into GDP? Well, it just makes the number look better. And but let's use their number. If they claim that we have a $20 trillion GDP and our debt is 35 trillion. Do you know what the debt to GDP ratio is? Yeah, you just take those numbers and you divide. Okay, so Argentina in 2001, why did their currency collapse? Because they had a socialist government that was attempting to provide vertically grade prosperity to their people on the basis of borrowing money from the World Bank. In 2001, their debt to GDP ratio reached parity, meaning that they had borrowed the same amount as what they were in debt to. And the World Bank said, obviously, you're not making progress, taking money from us, and then you keep wanting more, and your productivity is dropping. And so the World Bank in 2001 told Argentina, we're not going to. So they cut off their credit. That is when their currency collapsed. And that is what triggered 2 weeks of pure anarchy in Buenos Aires. It took 2 weeks for the military to be able to go in and to calm everything down, get it under control. And then the farmers went out because the stores didn't have any currency buying product. And it was just, it all imploded. Okay. And if you want to look, if you want to see what it really looks like when that kind of stuff happens, that book. I just want to pick it up and show you. This book it's not a theoretical story. It's a real life story of what the man lived as everything collapsed. So one of the main cottage industries that sprang up in Argentina after the currency collapse was carjacking. So people absolutely quit stopping at stop signs, and they quit stopping for red lights, and they would always keep their windows up, and it was not good. Okay, jewelry became currency, became money. Just not good. Now, where is the United States right now as far as debt to GDP ratio goes? About 1.26%. Most economists believe, and history shows, that there has never been a currency survive 1.3 ratio. That's my thought. It really is. Yeah, they're adding $1 trillion. We get 1.3 to 1. then that's pretty much the truth.
We're beyond term.
We're not beyond point of no return. But the probability of that is very small, I believe, because we don't have the political will to be conservative. You know, our elected representatives believe that they're there in Congress to take our taxes and give it back to us. You know, they just want to be the candy man. They don't want to be the implementers of austerity. And so unless we can get hold of our Congress critters and tell them, you have to change, you have to not spend as much money, then this is where we're headed. So we only got about, I don't like that. Yeah. I hadn't looked at it that way. You know, when we get 1.3 to 1, it's going to be dire. We have a number of things that I think are going to be innovated from the government's effort to try to kick this down the road a little bit. Who's heard of the central bank digital currencies? Yeah. Okay. So CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. I think that what they're going to do is use that as the tool to manage the hyperinflation trend. I think there's going to come a day, not too long, they'll say paper money is not good. You realize that right now, the American dollar, the printed dollar that we have, is less than 20% of the total dollars in circulation. 80% of the dollars that are out there are purely digital already. Okay. But what they're wanting to do is to move us over the common man into not having currency that we can spend. And that, I think, you know, this will be their innovation on managing hyperinflation or hyper devaluation, and that is the central bank digital currency. But yeah, I think it's coming. Yes, sir.
What will happen to the currency?
It evaporates.
It'll give you 20% on the dollar if it's gone.
Yeah, I don't think so. What we're going to see, you know, if you go to Zimbabwe right now, their paper currency is $1 trillion. You know, so the number really doesn't mean anything. If we continue to trade with the dollar, then it will shrink more and more and more in valuation and actual purchasing power. And one thing that he points out in surviving the economic collapse is that as they were going through their hyperinflationary spiral, their Congress passed a law indexing debt to the devaluation. Does that make sense? So, what was if their dollar lost half its value, then by the indexing legislation, what they said was because its value was half, they didn't want the lenders to actually suffer the penalty. And they said they will index the debt. So if the dollar lost half its value, then you had twice the debt.
You have to pay that
Twice as much. If it lost, you know, so it was proportional. So in Argentina, that's what they did. They indexed the debt to the devaluation. It totally wiped out. Totally wiped out. Yeah. So yes.
How do you think cryptocurrency is?
Okay, so a lot of people today have made a very good return on crypto investing, but this is Mark talking. Okay, and I'm not a financial advisor. I do have an opinion, and I don't see crypto as being anything more than a 10 piggy bank. Okay, so I see gold as being a gold piggy bank. it has real value. But if you have a tin or a plastic piggy bank and you put money into it, now that, let me say, you put currency into it, okay? If that currency goes to zero value, what is that piggy bank worth? This is a question I ask crypto investors. I haven't got the answer to this yet. If you spend the $60,000 that it takes to buy a Bitcoin today, and the dollar goes through this crash that I'm saying is imminent, what is that crypto coin worth? Why? She said half. Why? I mean, you put dollars in it. Now where's the value if the dollars are recognized as having zero? And to be honest with you, I don't have to this, okay? I can see an argument saying that everybody around the world is buying Bitcoin. So, you know, Dutch marks and British pounds, all these different currencies, Chinese yen are going to Bitcoin. And they have some kind of value in their respective countries. But if you buy a Bitcoin with American dollars, it collapses. What is that Bitcoin worth? I could entertain an argument saying that it's worth the average of those other currencies. But I still don't understand that after the point of reference.
That makes my, yeah, that makes you think of something handful of trying to sell the first cars. I think it's worth this, it's worth something.
That is the question. So he says that it will be worth whatever somebody paid. Okay. And which gets us back to the other currencies in the world. Okay, so if you have, you would have to look at what the exchange rate is between the other currencies in order to see what your Bitcoin is after dollar collapses. But I got more bad news. Do we need any more bad news? Bad news is that most of the other currencies in the world are pegged to the dollar. And so when the dollar collapses, there's a bunch of other currencies that will collapse. Who knows what the BRICS consortium? BRICS. Carol knows. BRICS. So you got Brazil, Russia, India, China, South America. Okay, those countries, South Africa, and I knew it was an S. South Africa. And those countries started a number of years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago, kind of working together to be outside of the Western currency systems. Yeah, especially, very much so. They're very much divesting themselves. Well, so Bill asked, Dr. Cross asked, how many countries are BRICS? It's changing. I don't know exactly how many, but they're taking in other countries, I think 10 or 12, over 20 countries in BRICS. And why is that important? Well, those countries are the ones that are like gold. And they're trying to base their currencies on tangible. As a matter of fact, these other countries find gold out of the United States. So now we get to a discussion of the United States has the reserve currency of the world. Does anybody?
So you're depressing the heck out of us.
Harry's got good news. Okay? I'll bring the bad news.
Let me hit. When we had lunch this past week, and kind of discussed tonight, he used the phrase about himself that he's chicken little. I don't really think he gets, and we do want to get to where we, what do we do in this? So what are some solutions? And we will get them, okay?
Has he read young people?
EMT.
Good question.
No, I'm not very widely read. I know the theory, okay, of what all that is. But there is good news, okay? And the good news is that this is not our home. And that in eternity, this is really a phenomenal concern, okay? My perspective is that we live in a country that was established by God. And how do we know that? Scripture tells us there's no country established by God. There's no country except that it was established by God. And we've been here for 250 years. I would say that we've got a good track record. Bad news is we're being bad stewards of what God gave us. And so my political activism and my economic activism is to try to convince people to get involved and to salvage what God has given us to His glory. Okay, it was established to His glory. We have the only founding documents for a country on the planet that acknowledge God as the giver of rights, not government. You know. So I think that we are called to speak to these situations and to just fight for real, not pretend. So I'm sorry, I had a point I was going to head for. It's easy for me. Yes, sir.
A question that, yes, FDIC, it's not safety. Like
Well, the bad news is
for a bank collapse. We talk about a small bank collapse, one of the big five.
one of the common thoughts for these guys that I put down is data resources is that we're headed for a system where all of the small banks essentially disappear, and this will probably happen CBDC. All of the small banks quit doing business and we're left with 5 major banks. The FDIC is horribly underfunded right now. Yeah. And so it's just not as good of a safety net as it's ever has to be. It can only handle a small number of collapses before it has to admit its insolvency.
You might be getting out.
Yeah. So we're not doing good as far as the banking system.
I think that
eventually, if money disappears, and it's likely to, we will go to a barter system where you might have something I want instead of I have something that you want instead of and so that's one of the things that Harry is greatly concerned about is that we don't want people here to say, God, please, I should panic. No, don't panic. That's not what this is all about. Because there are ways around some of this stuff that can be met if we all remain together. That's the key. And so there's a barter system that can be done.
How much
If
you
it all
get?
fails.
I have no numbers. Yeah, so I started my goat hearing about 30 years ago. And at one time I had 250 goats. That's milking 60 of them twice a day. And I really believed at the time that I was being a food producer against this scenario that we're talking. You know, I would be producing milk, and so I would have an assured income and I would be able to feed. And you know, God just didn't see it the same way as I did. My time frame must be off. So I shut my dairy down 10 years ago. Yes, sir.
How much gold do you have?
How much what?
Gold.
Some.
What would you recommend a person,
I'm sorry.
what would you recommend a person?
As a percentage of that, will
Okay, so, my personal philosophy is that, I don't trust banks. I've never bought a stock in my life. Okay, because I never had any money. But, I'm doing better now, and, I keep only about 10% of my liquid cash in the bank. The rest of it I turn into tangible assets. And so I believe that the tangible assets we need to be headed for are certainly gold and silver. I buy more silver than I do gold. But I think that other tangible assets like land and vehicles and tractors and guns and ammunition, I probably got more ammunition, wealth and ammunition than I had in silver. But tangible assets is what you go.
Back to my, that gold, that
So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Wayne,
Wait, how much gold I have?
Wayne, some of the experts that I've heard says this. You should, for the immediate future, every household should have at least 5 ounces of gold, 20 ounces of silver, and at least $10,000 in cash. And why should you even have cash at this time of year, expecting it to fall? Is because of the first 2 to 3 weeks or a month or so, people will still be taking cash for other things, and so it will still be around for that period of time. But after that, you're gonna have to start going to gold or silver or other barter techniques in order to be able to make it go. Now, one of the things that I'm concerned, and I think Harry is too, is if the money disappears and I don't have money in the bank to pay for taxes, then who's going to come for my farm? It's going to be the government. The government's still going to want to come for it. So lay aside enough silver and gold to pay your taxes on your land for at least 2 to 3 years. And so that's the to what I'm sure they will.
So the good news is, and this is really hard to conceptualize, you have to disconnect the dollars associated with gold and silver from value. Okay? Because you said it would be going up on their taxes. Well, they're just going to be charging more dollars because the dollars are going to be worth less. But the silver will still maintain the relative value. So personally, what I've done is look at the value that I have to pay in taxes. And then today I converted that to ounces of silver. But then I looked into the future and I said, okay, let's say, silver has a 5x valuation increase. So then how much am I going to pay in the future for my taxes? And then I bought that much silver, not much silver today to pay the taxes. So I bought roughly 1/5 the amount of silver as it would take to pay my taxes today. But I did store 5 years of silver against that potential. I think it will take, he said 2 to 3 years. I think it's going to be 5 to 7 years for everything to stabilize and normalize.
And if you have stock market or if you have 401ks, a lot of money, perhaps if you have some stock. But what happens if all of a sudden the stock market in which your 401k is invested, it drops, the bottom drops out of it? What should you have in place of them to keep yourself open? I tell you what I have done is have annuities set aside that will last us at least 4 to 5 years while the stock market might be down. And that is, we've done that. Financial advisor at Fidelity suggested that. So we have annuities set aside that we could spend annuities for 4 or 5 years while the stock market's down because the stock market
So let me tell you,
disappeared.
Let me tell you a story out of a surviving collapse that Bill reminded me of. As the currency was collapsing, right after the World Bank said Argentina can't have loan, there were insiders, or people who had friends inside the banking system, told them it's collapsing. And they allowed these people with inside knowledge to go to the bank, get the stack of paper out quickly. And then those guys were running through the streets of Buenos Aires. You know, hey, how much do you want for that old pickup truck? Here, take it. Now it's mine. And so they were converting their currency into tangible asset as fast as they could. They were buying earrings off of women's ears. They were buying trucks and cars and whatever they could do to convert it into tangible asset. That was a last ditch effort to maintain their wealth. And what I'm saying is we need to learn from these stories, and you need to convert as much of your wealth into tangible assets as possible. When the bottom starts falling, when the CDC is implemented, I don't think they're going to give you access to it.
And Janet Yellen has just came out with a plan that they're talking about taking at least 10% of your 401k and putting it into T-bills that you cannot use for 2 years.
They want to appropriate your money for 2 years. So that in the economic world is called a buy-in. Is anybody familiar with what happened on the island of Cyprus about 5 or 7 years ago? Everybody went to bed Friday night and sky was blue and the grass was green. Monday morning, the banks didn't open up. And the banks stayed open, I think, somewhere between 1 to 2 weeks. And when they opened up, every banking account had taken about a 10 to 15% haircut. And they said, the government ran out of money, we needed more money, so thank you very much for your donation.
Didn't they get safe and private prices too?
I think they've got into everything. They skimmed about 10 to 15% because of their bad governmental policies. And this plan that Janet's advocating is a variation on the same thing. Yeah, question back here.
Bill, what makes you insurance companies don't pay off what they could? Their investments are in debt security.
Because it's solid, it's money, it's cash money. So, yeah, the insurance company still has it, and it's still cash. But if it does fail, at least we have to come back. That's not the only thing.
Sir?
With the world being so digitally locked in, everybody's using these credit cards and all that for everything you do. Since you've read the books and stuff, how do people barter if there's, I'm guessing that the grocery stores will have something for sale. What kind of?
That's a bad guess.
Yeah, I know that, but what I'm saying is, what did the countries do in the bartering side of it after the crash?
Well, you barter with what you have.
I mean, the credit cards are zipped, they're not.
Yeah, they don't work anymore. So in Argentina,
But when you trade something for something, say, I give you my watch, go.
yes, that's how it works. Okay, and so I call that the true free market. And some people want to call it the black market, but it's the true free market. But what are you trading? You're trading something of value for something of value. And so it becomes just where there's a willing trader and a willing buyer.
Mark, we got about 15 minutes left. And what I'd like to do in these last 15 minutes, let's kind of bring it down to, we talked about the sky is falling. Now, if it falls, what do we do? And so, how many of you, and you don't have to answer this out loud or raise a hand, but do you have mortgages on your home? If you don't, that's a good thing. If you do, what happens when currency fails or if the monetary system fails, then you don't have a means to pay for that. So I would suggest that in the meantime, while money still has some value, you look at how can I get that paid off. So that would be one thing. The other Bill mentioned, let's say you have it paid off, but then the monetary system fails and they come in with your taxes and your money's no good, your credit card's no good. How do you pay your taxes? These things happened in the Great Depression.
Yes,
If I know back out in the county that I live in, the people that had resources, they bought up the land taxes. I'm not suggesting you do that, that's really motivating. But you need to be prepared so that you can pay your taxes. Now, we're not gonna deal with political things and things like that. We didn't see that as one of our seminars. I do want to say to you, what they're trying to do now is they want to do what they call tax unrealized assets. So let's say, as the example that was given, let's say that you went out and you bought a farm, dairy, goat dairy, whatever, for $500,000. Today it's worth $2.5 million. They come in and say, well, you've made $2 million on that. We're going to tax that unrealized gain at 44 point whatever percent. And so you have to come up with $880,000, $900,000. You don't have that, so you end up having to sell property. I don't know what you do with that, because we're talking about big bucks for that. But the government right now, looking at the insolvency, are grasping at straws of how they keep getting money. So we need to pray for our officials. We have a mandate to do that.
either that or both of them off.
Just say, I stand, and we need to vote informed and get people into there. You don't have any opinion, right? We're not going there. Understood. That wasn't an opinion. So what I'm trying to say to you, the sons of Issachar could discern the time. Not all of the children of Israel could. But they also, when they discerned the times, they fought Israel. So what we're trying to do in these seminars, there are people who have discerned the times. They see what's happening, what historically where it's headed, and rather than us sitting with our head in the sand, we're saying, okay, can we become aware, and then what are steps to do? So let me just ask our panel up here, and you guys can share that mic. What would be the thought, and maybe you have questions? Obviously, if you have debt, if you have debt, I think that would be a wise thing, because you might as well get out of debt while money's worth. It goes to work not worthy. So, any suggestions from the three of you, or any questions that you want?
You mentioned real estate. They can't value to the point where it would be difficult to pay down. Grant you that. So, what, 2 years, 3 years, 3 years?
At least.
Set aside that, maybe.
I almost hate to say this, but you have to envision what's going to happen. And stuff like this goes on. Marcus mentioned stuff. It would throw chaos. We will be in different states. We've already seen how many businesses have moved out of California and New York because of people go in and just take money and take stuff. So it's becoming chaotic every. And so you need to just envision in your own mind what this is going to look like and prepare yourself for it. Because another seminar that we're going to have Rand will be here and he will talk about personal security, vehicle security, and security. Because you can have silver and gold, but if you don't protect it, what is going to happen to it? And the other thing is, what are you going to do if the power grid goes down, either from TNT or Chinese cyber attack or whatever else? What are you going to do? Are you prepared for those kind of things? I mean, it's a lot of preparatory work and it's thoughtful. But again, I thought about this a lot, obviously. We cannot panic because that's exactly what Satan wants us to do. And there's a lot of satanic evil forces that not only here in the United States, but across the world. And you're trying to get people to be panicked so that they be under control. So that's where I'm at. I'm looking what we sure I take care of precious thing in the world for me. Like everything, what I'm gonna do. You know, I'm fooling around my house at night. Yeah. That's what I'm. But the other thing that I really feel like I ought to read to Habakkuk is probably one of the smallest books in the Bible, but Habakkuk says this in chapter 3, verse 17, although the fig tree shall not blossom, neither shall fruit be in the vines, the labor of the olive shall fail, the field shall yield no meat, the flock shall be cut off from the fold, and there will be no herd in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the Lord of my salvation. The Lord God is my strength. He will make my feet like hinds feet, and he will make me walk upon high places. And I want you to know, God doesn't necessarily pave the road to make it smooth. He prepares your feet to walk whatever path you lay. And that's my key.
Let me just say something I hadn't thought about. Some of you may have life lock or home title lock, and I don't know what those particular costs. We'll look into it. But if you say, well, my budget will afford that, rather than do that, I was talking with the pastor for I think he's on tonight, Chris out of Atlanta, and he said when what he has done, there are 3 credit bureaus. You can look them up. And the suggestion was go on there and lock those 3 credit bureaus. Because if somebody coming trying to get a loan with a false identity, when they check your credit, it's locked. They think it's credit. They won't give them the loan. So you can go on each of those 3 sites, lock the credit, and then if you needed a loan, you can go and unlock. So these are just some practical things that would help.
I have, I was thinking about the seminar. I went to the Bible. Dave Ramsey says this. I haven't checked it out. It says 2,500 verses in the Bible. It speaks on the subject of finance. 2,500. Dave Ramsey also says something else, which I know to be a fact. From my own experiences, that financial security comes from 80% of our behavior and 20% of skill. Behavior. So keying off of that, I went and looked at a bunch of Bible verses, like where can we find the best financial advice? What does the Bible have to say about it? Does God give us the skill to get wealthy or get wealth? Answer yes. Verses, questions like that, I just wrote in and have a Bible verse reference. You would find a copy of that, give me an email, send it to you.
No, I have no comment. I like chicken milk. These toes are kind of different. Revealed all this to us.
had good thoughts and listened. But I think it's very simple, to hear what Mark has.
Can you tell us anything about this law? I suppose we already so sided with that about the Fed coin, that we're all going to have to go to a digital.
Well, that's the CDs talking about it. And they're being very reluctant to bring that out because they know there's a lot of opposition to it. Just common people like having a coin or full money in their pocket. But when we reach the 1.3 to 1 debt to GDP ratio, I think that's when they'll kind of pull the trigger. You know, we won't have a choice.
Do you know what's going to do?
Well, it's just the central bank digital currency, and they'll call it dollar still. It's just you won't be able to do anything with it except on the little credit cards they give you or the implant that they put in your forehead on the back of your hand. So, but that digital coin is the CDC.
Well, we're gonna end our time now. I want to say thanks for that. We're going to know about the issue, how that works. When the illegal aliens are coming into the debit card, they don't get that. Debit card. Yes, go to a business and digitally they can buy at the end of the month it's replenished with more money. So if you think we are already in a digital, we are. I think Mark said when we were talking that for all the money you quote have in the bank, only 50% dollars.
No, it's actually, it has over. Yeah.
Well, I was so rocking it, and I thought,
Yeah, I got another.
well, our time's up. Let's give Mark a minute. Let me close in prayer, and you know, we may have to follow up on some of this somewhere in the future. But our goal tonight is to try to get things be aware of the circumstances, and we don't have all the answers, but we certainly know God does. So let's kind of Father, thank you tonight for Mark for the time you spent in investigating.